Have you ever come to a point where you just felt like that your sufficiency was no longer sufficient? Where you felt that your understanding of things in your life doesn't quite get it? You're not quite getting it? Where you feel like you're at the end of knowing what to do. You just don't know what to do. You don't know where to go. You can't figure it out. Well, that's what I mean by reaching the end of yourself, where you feel like your resources, your sufficiency, your knowledge, your skill, your whatever is just not making it, and you're at the end of your rope. A lot of people get there. I've been there at times. So when you just really come to that point, what do you do? What do you do? I'm going to take you to a passage in the Bible that it's probably familiar to you, but I don't know that many people think of it as the answer to this question that I'm presenting, of what do you do when you reach the end of yourself. I'm talking about Proverbs chapter 9, verse 10. Proverbs chapter 9, verse 10. And it says this. It says, "The fear of the Lord is the beginning of wisdom." The fear of the Lord is the beginning of wisdom. Now there's more to the verse than that. There's another line, but I don't want to take time getting into the full verse here tonight. But the fear of the Lord is the beginning of wisdom. But what on earth does that have to do with those times when we feel like we've reached the end of ourselves? There are three key concepts in this passage. First, the fear of the Lord. Secondly, something called the beginning. And thirdly, this thing called wisdom. The fear of the Lord, the beginning, and wisdom. The passage says the fear of the Lord is the beginning of wisdom. Now, first I want to talk about wisdom. In ancient times, even among the Phoenicians and in other pagan cultures, not just the Hebrews, whenever they would be facing times that were distressing, such as the Phoenician seamen when they were out to sea, they would turn their face toward their gods, toward the heavens, so to speak, and be asking their gods for divine energies and power to enable them to do whatever was needed to practically get them through their storms or through their difficult situations. And the concept was true also of the Hebrews, that whenever they would be facing difficult times, they would turn their face to heaven to ask for the ability of God to be able to work through the practical aspects of life, okay? And don't we all do the same? We call out to God when we're in a situation we don't know what to do. Well, that was called wisdom. That they were basically asking God for wisdom, for the energy, the power, the ability to work through the practical aspects of life. In fact, many places in the Old Testament, when it speaks of skill that is needed, skill that's needed for weavers and artisans, craftsmen, even skill in administration, the Bible uses the word wisdom as a synonym for skill. Okay? So what I'm saying here is that we need, all of us in life, in working through the practical everyday matters of life, we need God's help, God's power, God-given ability to work through the practical issues of our life. Don't we? Okay. Well, that's a given. We all know that. So what do we do when we reach the end of ourselves? Well, what's that all about? Okay, we've talked about wisdom. I want to go back and talk about the fear of the Lord. The fear of the Lord is the beginning of wisdom, and we'll use this concept of the beginning for the last piece of this. In fact, it's that one expression, the beginning, that is the key that's going to release all of this into your situation if you're wondering, how am I going to make it now that I have reached the end of myself? Okay, so stay with me now, okay? So wisdom is that God-given ability to work through the practical issues of life, okay? But it says the fear of the Lord is the beginning of wisdom. Now, the fear of the Lord, or the fear of God, is not like the fear of anything else. If I'm out in the forest and I encounter a wild animal, I may become afraid of that animal, and it would cause me to want to run from that animal or to fight that animal, right? Or if I'm out in a dangerous situation and encounter a dangerous person, I may be wanting to run from that person out of fear or defend myself in some way, okay? But the fear of God is not like that, okay? The fear of other things causes us to run from those things. The fear of God does the exact opposite. It causes us to run to God. Now hear me now. The fear of God doesn't cause us to run from God. The fear of God causes us to run to Him, to run in His arms. Well, why would that be? Well, for one thing, understand that God is a unique entity. He is unlike anything else in all creation. He's in a class all to Himself. In fact, that's what the word holy means. When we say that God is holy, that means He's set apart in a class all to Himself. So it's understandable that there are emotions that we may have in relationship with God that's unlike any emotion that we would have in relation to any other entity in the universe. Okay? So just remember that. The fear of God is not what you normally would think of. It's more like an awe of God or a reverence of God. It's kind of like if you're in a room full of people and someone of great importance walks in the room, you suddenly are awestruck by them because you understand their importance. And if you were being asked to speak to them, you would measure your words carefully, right? Well, so it is with the fear of the Lord. It's that kind of awe of the Lord where we recognize we are not His equal. Do you understand? We are not His peers. We cannot instruct Him. We do not know better than Him what to do. His wisdom far surpasses our own. Okay? All right. So the fear of the Lord is mostly about that awe. But there's another aspect of it. The fear of the Lord is also a fear of the possibility of living life apart from Him. It's a fear of being apart from Him. It's a fear of not having Him. It's a sense of our absolute need for Him. So in a sense, you could think of it like this, that the fear of the Lord is that which is best represented by our dependency on Him. The fear of the Lord is equal to us bringing Him to the center place in our life, elevating Him to the place of greatest importance, Him being at the center. It is an acknowledgement of our reliance, our dependence on Him. It is really a place of humility. When you're walking in the fear of the Lord, you're really walking in humility, a recognition of your great need for God, and that you cannot live apart from Him. So, okay, and here's the pieces now. We've talked about two of them. There are three parts to that verse. Proverbs 9:10. The fear of the Lord is the beginning of wisdom. We've talked about wisdom. That's those divine energies and power and abilities that come from God to be able to handle the practical aspects of life, okay? To live life rightly, to utilize knowledge rightly, and all of that. The fear of the Lord, we've talked about that. In essence, it's placing Him first. It is having Him as the centerpiece of the life, the indispensable element in our life that we cannot do without it, okay? So let's look at it now. The fear of the Lord is the beginning of wisdom. So placing Him in the center of your life is the beginning of receiving His abilities, His energy, His power that enables us to handle the difficulties in life, okay? But I want us to look at that concept of the beginning. There's an implication there with the word beginning that is often missed. The concept of beginning, it's a new beginning. And the implication is that whatever has been tried before is coming to an end so that we may enter into a new beginning. Whatever abilities we may have felt that we had before, whatever self-sufficiency, whatever resources that we might have previously thought were adequate, whatever we were relying on before, it comes to an end. When we come to this place where we feel like we've reached the end of ourselves, We are, through circumstances, often brought to that place of recognizing our total dependence on Him. But what about this? What if we voluntarily come to the Lord and say to Him, Lord, I am right now going to acknowledge that my own sufficiency, my own resources, my own abilities is not enough. So instead of self-reliance, I'm going to rely upon you. I'm going to bring you to the central place of my life as the ultimate Lord over my life. When we do that, we enter into a new beginning. That moment that you humble yourself and acknowledge, I really need you. And we live our life once again, a renewed life in awareness of the awesomeness of God and of His great wisdom and ability. That's the gateway into a new beginning to where we rediscover His sufficiency. So what do we do when we feel like we've reached the end of ourselves? The thing to do is this. Say to Him, Lord, search me. In what areas of my life have I not made you the center? In what ways have I not walked in humility before you? In what ways have I ignored your commandments, your instructions to me? In what ways have I assumed that I know better, that I have a better idea than you have of how I'm to live my life? I believe that if we allow the Spirit of God to search us in such a way, we will be brought to a place once again where we will see clearly how we need to make our God the centerpiece of our life once again. The fear of the Lord, or making the Lord central to our lives, is the new beginning that will lead to wisdom, divinely given ability to handle the practical aspects